Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into the very first video on my YouTube channel. This channel will mainly focus on video game lore and mythos, but today we're going to start with a game I'm very passionate about. WildStar's lore is a little hard for some to grasp, and a lot of it is broken up into several books, journals, and audio logs throughout the game. I'm here to tackle the effort of compiling the lore into a tangible story and present it to you in a friendly format. But enough of that. Let's get to the Eldan and the Nexus Project. The Eldan are creatures whose society has been around for thousands, maybe millions of years. They have been shrouded in mystery to many younger species. But with the recent discovery of Nexus, a planet engineered entirely by the Eldan, light has been shown upon their culture, technology, and science. Eldan culture seems to revolve around the 6 orders, groups specializing in different tasks to suit their race's needs. Each played a pivotal role throughout the project, though teamwork was often difficult due to individual interests and loyalty within one's own order. The Order of Progenitors are masters of using primal powers to create life. Their knowledge allows them to engineer unique organisms with previously unseen physical traits. Progenitor Omna, or Mother Omna, as she was called by many of her creations, was perhaps the most kind, albeit naive, of the progenitors. She created many creatures including the Xenobites and her prize Skeech, though the other Eldan found them as annoyances and scheduled them for eradication. Omna loved her Skeech, so she smuggled them onto the planet Nexus, hoping the dangerous planet would do the deed she could not. While she was generally sincere towards her peers, one man earned her anger on many occasions. Progenitor Nazareth completely contrasted with Omna's motherly nature, delighting in creating only the deadliest of organisms on Nexus. Nazareth was responsible for the creation of the necromantic Moody's, the brain-eating Squirg, mighty stem dragons, and even the Dreg, who served as the blueprint for all of the Eldan's humanoid organisms. His insatiable desire for unbelievably dangerous things also led to the designing and creation of his pet project, Skullcano. Skullcano was a masterpiece in his eyes, a perfect island where only the strong would survive and the weak would perish. He also altered the Skeech females simply to spite Omna, turning the poor females into ugly old hags. Despite the bitter hatred for one another, he and Omna also worked on the creation of the Pell, the Osin, the Falkrin, and many other creatures native to Nexus. Eldan technology continued to advance under the guidance of the Order of the Makers. Their creation of advanced artificial intelligence and mechanical constructs ushered the Nexus Project to its ultimate success. Maker Vorian was perhaps the greatest technologist in the universe, having designed several Eldan technologies, including the Terraformers, impressive machines that shaped the landscape of Nexus. Augmentation, a process of injecting nanites into organisms to perfect any flaws. Focuses, massive floating structures used to concentrate and channel energy. And the Caretaker, the artificial intelligence created to monitor and maintain operations throughout all of Nexus. Vorian was brilliant and ambitious, though some found his technology sickening. Augmentation was detested by the progenitors as it completely altered the natural evolution, even turning the subjects into slaves. Though some disliked him, one Eldan hated Maker Vorian, one within his own order. Maker Zarkonis suffered from an inferiority complex next to Maker Vorian, though he would never believe it himself. Zarkonis was as depraved as Nazareth, but desired making only the most dangerous technology, weapons on a planetary scale that he was tempted to test on more than one occasion. He was often never satisfied with the results, and made it a goal to make his weapons even more destructive as time passed. His loathing for Maker Vorian took the highest priority, Zarkonis' process of recombination being even deadlier than augmentation, tearing out the limbs and organs of other creatures and replacing them with machinery, a traumatic experience very few survived. Ultimately, the recombination facility was shut down and the experiments terminated, much to the dismay of Zarkonis and the relief of every other living creature. Within the Eldan orders, the creation and manipulation of mass is the responsibility of the Shapers. The advanced terraforming techniques they have perfected provide a canvas for the Elda's greatest work. Shaper Karal was a man who loved Nexus and the land he shaped upon it. He was absolutely enthralled as life began to flourish within the world he created and took great pride and care in every aspect of his work. He was perhaps the most reasonable and sensible Eldan of all the orders. As the project took a more divine purpose, Shaper Kral was the first to question many issues that continued throughout, and was regularly made an outcast for his beliefs. Kral heard rumors of his obstructive opinions, and began fearing for his life as the Nexus Project reached its goal. The Watchers are keepers of all Eldan knowledge. They are to record and collate all collected data, as well as confirm the other orders adhere to the established scientific protocols. Watcher Ionis kept a close eye on every aspect of the Nexus Project to ensure everything went smoothly and according to plan. Despite his intentions, there were many protocols ignored throughout the Nexus Project, while he studied very alarming changes on the planet that few even acknowledged. Many of the other Eldan chose solely to pursue the project's goals, and the divine purpose behind it. Ionis warned that this behavior almost led to the destruction of the Eldan once before. The Order of Watchers was specifically made to prevent this from happening again. Evocation is the manipulation of power and energy using the mind alone, a skill held among all Eldan within the Order of the Evokers. Their craft inevitably revealed new scientific horizons upon the planet Nexus. Evoker Eliana was a lover of nature and its beauty, wielding it with incredible ease. She was born with a soft heart for many creatures, often becoming melancholy and empathetic when coming across those who have changed drastically to survive and others who simply could not keep up and died out years ago. She detested the Makers and the technology they used to bend the natural world to their will, preferring the sorcery her order prided themselves upon. The Weavers are masters of the dynamics associated with combining and infusing primal energy into both living and inanimate objects, creating wonders never seen before in the universe. Weaver Aviel adored the primal energies and the things that could be born from them. She began the process of creating elementals, sentient beings made entirely from pure primal energy, and later shared the secrets of wielding the energies with the Eldan servants, the Pel. While Aviel was certainly wise, she was also very selfish and looked down upon others. She thought women were far superior than men, though often gave herself a special seat of importance among the other Eldan on Nexus. The 6 Eldan orders all had a hand in shaping Planet Nexus into what it is today. Even some of the smallest choices had significant long-term effects that can still be seen today. The Nexus Project itself was guided by Jariel the Archon. It was the Archon's duty to ensure the Eldan orders worked together, usually requiring them to gain his approval before moving forward on their own. Even within the position of leadership, the Archon couldn't help but fantasize about the divine purpose behind their work, often focusing solely on the project's goals despite many arising issues. Before we can speak about the history of the Nexus Project, there's one more very important topic that needs discussion. The Eldan were among the first to discover that all things within the universe derived from primal powers. Primal matter being earth, air, water, and fire, and the primal forces being life and logic. There is a rumored 7th power, but for the time being, it's just that. Primal Earth's power derives from its cohesion, resilience, and strength. It is the most stable of all the primal elements, and its capacity for destruction is demonstrated through earthquakes and scouring sandstorms. Primal Air is a wild and powerful element, which is resistant to containment and control. Its true power manifests in gale force winds, lightning, and the massive atmospheric storms of gas giants. Primal Water is the most unstable of all the primal elements, and reacts in a manner contrary to common sense or convention. Primal Water reveals itself in scalding steam and the frozen ice of comets. Primal Fire is an angry infusion of ruin and unpredictability. The force inherent to Primal Fire is the most destructive of all primal elements, revealing itself in wildfires, volcanic eruptions, and supernovas. Primal Life is at the heart of all living things. While a lack of primal life ultimately results in weakness and death, an abundance of such perfection works against itself in the form of growth unchecked. And finally, primal logic dictates the patterns that make up the fabric of creation. It manifests itself in the configuration of the universe, placing seemingly random things in a more ordered arrangement. With the knowledge of the Eldan orders and the science behind primal powers, we can begin the story of the planet Nexus from its conception to the present time. Thousands, perhaps millions of years ago, the Eldan began the fabrication of a world near two moons, Halon and Pyra. As the skeleton of planet Nexus was being made, the Eldan began testing technology that would ultimately shape the planet's surface. This facility, known as Farside, was located on the dark side of the moon Halon. Within the biodome facilities, the Eldan tested terraforming specific landscapes and creating organisms to reside within them. It was here that Omna first created the Skeech, and here as well that they were scheduled for termination. Nazareth engineered the Squirg as well, though he would keep that hidden for the time being. The moon of Halon was also prone to asteroids as they pelted the moon's surface regularly. Sarkonis created the planetary defense cannon with the sole purpose of destroying threatening asteroids and anyone foolish enough to invade Nexus as the Eldan worked. Sarkonis was so pleased with his weapon there was some temptation to use it on Nexus itself, merely to witness its fantastic power. With the help of their newly created assistants, the creatures known as the Pell, the Eldan began to move forward with the project, without a single doubt that anything could go wrong. Exosites and exolabs littered the planet's surface, facilities made to manufacture technology and to test experiments that would bring the project step by step closer to its goal. Nazareth's humanoid design, the Dreg, were the foundation for many other sentient creatures upon the planet. The Eldan decided to present themselves as divine beings to their creations, understanding the necessity to remain mysterious and all-powerful, at least in appearance. Though things seemed to be going smoothly, one species had begun to arise above the others, a society both admired and feared. The Osin, called the OS-1 by the Eldan, are believed to have been a military defense force created around 1,000 years ago. The Osin society progressed at an incredible, even alarming rate, developing hyper-advanced technology and weapons, enslaving those around them, and even mastering their craftsmanship beyond Eldan expectations. One such technique was the forging of exonite. Exonite is a substance found in very small quantities on planets, one containing all 6 primal powers in perfect balance with one another. Though Nexus is unlike other worlds, having vast quantities of exonite in certain regions. Exonite is nigh indestructible, and only the Eldan seem to understand how to cultivate it. As the knowledge of the Osin's advancement spread, so did their growing aggression towards their masters. Many Eldan worried that the Osin were beyond their control and believed extermination was necessary. However, the Archon chose, in Nazareth's words, a more measured and ultimately short-sighted approach. It is unknown what exactly happened to the Osin, but their society is now drastically different from its origins. Their once great civilizations lie in ruin, the Osin forgetting their past and returning to barbaric, warmongering tribes. The next step in the Nexus Project came with the discovery of Primal Infusion, a process of imbuing organisms with vast quantities of primal energy. The greatest issue seemed to come from the necessity for such massive quantities of energy to make the process a reality. Forian solved this issue with the creation of the Primal Focus, a floating machine that concentrates and channels primal energy in an abundance necessary for future projects. The first tests were done upon the loyal Pell servants, later choosing an Eldan to become the primal infused being. Within what we now know as Stormtalon's lair in Galaras, the Eldan used the incubator to turn one of their own into the mighty Osiric, the primeval of air and the very first of his kind.
Desecrate the temple of Osiric? To all, my fulcrum! Cleanse these trespassers from my kingdom!
The Eldan named these creatures after the gods of their mythology, bothering a few with the increasing divine purpose behind what was supposed to be a scientific endeavor. Sometime later, the primeval of life, Vitara, was created from the progenitor Nurium. It was around this time that the Eldan had taken interest in the Cassian society and their colonization of the planet Cassis. The humans were advancing remarkably on their own, proving to be everything the Eldan had hoped for with the Humanoid project. The Makari, sentient constructs made by the Eldan to do their bidding, traveled to the planet Cassis to strike a deal with the Cassian Commonwealth, the government at the time. Led by Axis Phaedra, the Makari demanded that the humans hand over Trisane Toria, and in return they would lead the Eldan's future empire. If they refused, their society as a whole would be annihilated. The choice was pretty obvious. Trisane Toria was the greatest of all the Cassian sword maidens, and after a brief scuffle with the Makari, it was decided that she may bring along the rest of her sword maidens as well. Upon the planet Nexus, her primal pattern was used with the Archons to fabricate the first Eldan hybrid known as the Lumini. The Lumini would oversee the Eldan's great legacy and spread it far across the cosmos. The first of their kind and Trisane Toria's son, Dominus the Half-Blood, would return to Cassis to form the Dominion. But that's a story for another time. The last primeval to be made, Hydrus, was infused with the most unstable primal power, water. Uria of the Evokers was chosen for the Hydrus protocols, many seeing it as insane and ironic that the most unstable of the Eldan should be fused with the most unstable power. Uria suffered from paranoia and possible schizophrenia, relishing in the idea of becoming a god and deciding to be a terrible, vengeful one. Though the Hydrus protocols ended destructively with the escape of the newly born Hydrus, the Archon deemed the project ready to go into its final stages. As the Nexus Project reached the final steps, the Eldan began preparations for the creation of the Genesis Prime, a creature spawned from the Primal Infusion of all 6 primal powers, as well as 6 of the Eldan's greatest minds. A godly being even by Eldan standards. Nexus and all of its experiments led up to this single objective. A plan of such magnitude requires the utmost security. The Eldan-made planet of Nexus would be the safest place to house such experiments. First came designing the technology to actually fuse the 6 Eldan and 6 powers together. Despite the Eldan's great knowledge, they had yet to create anything so precise and intricate. It was the Archon who acquired the designs from a mysterious benefactor. The protoplasmic resonator was revered by many Eldan as an accomplishment beyond comprehension. When the other Eldan, including Vorian, begged the Archon to tell them of the design's creator, the Archon refused to ever share such information. The final step was choosing the 6 candidates to become the Genesis Prime. Aviel of the Weavers, Ionis of the Watchers, and Bathior of the Evokers were the first 3. Aviel accepted the chance to gain such power immediately. Ionis believed his subconscious would add stability, and Bathior actually petitioned for his place among the 6, though he also petitioned that all 6 candidates be Evokers due to their superiority. He was unsurprisingly refused. The next 2 proved controversial. Of the progenitors, Nazareth was chosen, the offer first being given to Amna, who refused after seeing Nurium's change into Vitara, and feared losing herself to the transformation. Nazareth, on the other hand, accepted immediately. Of the Makers, Zarkonis was chosen instead of Vorian, much to the dismay of the Archon. Vorian believed that he was the only one truly capable of operating the protoplasmic resonator, to which the Archon agreed. Zarkonis accepted the offer with such delight that he openly mocked Vorian for his inferiority. The Archon, still disappointed with Vorian's refusal, said nothing in response. The final candidate seems obvious, shouldn't it? One from each Eldan Order were present, all save the Shapers. The Archon, however, had chosen himself as the 6th. He believed that it was obvious that the project's great leader be one of the 6. After the Archon confirmed that none of the Shapers would be chosen, Shaper Corral stated that he had never been so relieved in his entire life. Within what is now known as Blighthaven, the Eldan began the process of creating the Genesis Prime. 6 primal powers, 6 chosen Eldan, and the protoplasmic resonator would create a god. The single greatest achievement in the universal history. Nazareth stated in a data cube that he wouldn't play by the rules and altered the machine settings beforehand with the help of a mysterious separate party. One can only assume this would also be the creator of the designs. Before Vorian could discover these changes, the Genesis Prime had been born, Drusera. Even for a god, Drusera was only born recently, being rather naive to all of her abilities. It was up to Eliona of the Evokers to teach Drusera how to wield her magnificent powers. Many of the Eldan loved Drusera, some feared her, and others weren't sure what to think. Progenitor Omna was fearful of Drusera, all her life desiring a simple life like the creature she had created. Now standing before her was the superior she had desired for so long. For the time being, the Eldan relished in their achievement, though in time they quickly discovered the cost of their hubris. Drusera's personality seemed to be split in two, the innocent girl she normally was, and the entity, an amalgamation of evil intent on corrupting the universe as a whole. Those who became corrupted were known as the Strain, creatures infected with the biophage that share a hive mind under the control of the entity. Nothing is safe from the corruption. Even machines can be tainted with a form of strain known as technophage. There is no known reversal of the corruption, and all efforts to combat it have failed. As Drusera and the entity fought for control over their body, the Eldan knew what must be done. Maker Vorian was the first to act, even before the entity was created. Though many of his peers saw his work as a descent into madness, Vorian was obsessed with the project's security, taking every measure possible to keep it safe. The Technocore was a layer of security algorithms no one except Vorian could solve. The Caretaker, the AI in charge of managing every aspect of the project, was introduced to the security upgrade Avitus, named after the impregnable Eldan city of the past. The Caretaker hated Avitus for his paranoid, psychotic nature, and couldn't grasp why Vorian did not trust the Caretaker alone with security. Finally, the Primal Disintegrator was built, with the sole purpose of destroying the entity. Whether or not this would also kill Drusera is unknown. In the final moments of the Nexus Project, Vorian entrusted his apprentice Nazareth to initiate the Primal Disintegrator. As the process of termination began, the entity awoke from his sedated state and annihilated everyone. The Caretaker confirmed that no living Eldan remained on the planet Nexus, now understanding Vorian's caution. In one last sacrifice, the Caretaker fractured his neural core to unleash Avitus, to keep all secrets of the Nexus Project safe. Drusera, filled with guilt and sadness, was also quick to act, creating the Light Spire, a tower made entirely from Exonite, to house herself and the entity. Exonite's resonance seems to ward off the strain, allowing Drusera to fight the entity for control. Despite her efforts, all seemed hopeless as she fought alone. However, after centuries of solitude, Nexus was visited by many different creatures and factions. Perhaps someone among them could help end the entity. And with that, we arrive to the present time. Even with this storyline, there are still many secrets behind the mysterious planet Nexus. Where are the other Eldan, if there are any? Did they shape other worlds and creatures? And who was this mysterious benefactor? The Megadroids? Other malicious Eldan? Maybe someone we've yet to even see. Nothing can be said for certain, but one thing is clear. Someone or something is out there that was able to create designs to a device even the Eldan could not, and chose Nazareth to undermine the project. Whoever they are, they must be extremely powerful, intelligent, and cunning, even by Eldan standards. That just about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you liked my video, and leave a comment of what WildStar lore you would like to see explained in the future. Until next time, see ya on Nexus.